Right, morning, folks. Quite a few of us here this morning because I know this is a hot topic, but welcome to those of you that have not been to an SRITC cafe before. I'm Jenny Milne, for those of you that I haven't actually seen online or in person, and it is about coffee, cake and chat and rural transport. And today we're really lucky to have Susan come and join us, and she's going to speak to us about car clubs. But because it's about coffee and cake, and for those of you that do read the news bulletin, I did say I'd share some photographs about cake. And there is cake, and that's on the screen. That my son was 14 earlier this month, and he's very much into his off-road driving with a very cheap and affordable Jimny. So that is the Jimny cake, which I said I would show some of you. So I'll come back to cake in a minute, but please use the chat box if you've not already started using it. It is your friend. Introduce yourself, say where you are, and if you could possibly just put the first few letters and numbers of your postcode, not so we can come and haunt you and drop on your doorstep, but more that we can actually start to plot where people are joining us from, so that we can explain to our funders our reach and just put that picture together. We're also about sharing ideas, and that's what we're definitely going to hear about today. And I've warned Susan that there's going to be quite a lot of folk asking questions today, so she's armed and prepared. I see Sheila's also joined us today, so I'm just going to ask, I cheated because I've had so much cake in the house. Anybody just unmute themselves? Anybody got cake or coffee with them today? Because I've got a very healthy gluten-free biscuit because I've been eating so much cake today. So is anybody? Alison Duff's got his coffee. Who else has got what today? Nikki's got coffee. I'm going through, I've got about 40 of you to look at. Terry, what's that? A tonic tea cake or something? Yes, tonic tea cake. Fantastic. Campbell's there as well. Have you got something, Campbell?
I have indeed. I'm going savoury today with a calendar-based roll today.
Okay, somebody's got something on in the background. If you could just mute yourself, please, that would be really helpful. Right, I will eat my piece of chocolate after I've introduced everybody and Susan's talking. So for those of you that haven't been to a cafe, you can pay attention for 2 minutes. For those of you that know this off by heart, you can probably take over from me in future to do these slides. But just to say that SRITC, I am the founder, and we have two other directors that work alongside me, Alex, who's here today, and Alistair McEnroy, who some of you may know through Technology Scotland and Mass Scotland. We also have some musketeers, which are volunteers, and one or two of them are on here today. It is being revamped, and Matt is here today as part of our team. He's responsible for pulling that together. So if you're wanting to get involved with SRITC, even just for half an hour in a month, just please do drop us a message as we're pulling together the new musketeer look. We also have an advisory board, and some of these are on here today as well, like Artemis is here, I see Linda's here. Don't think Magnus, who's in Sweden, is here, or Laurie, who's in Italy, is here, but we have quite a large range of people. I think Jim might be here as well today, that are our advisory board and help look at the strategy. So this is part of the team of volunteers. And then at the bottom, we have some financial supporters who are Smarter Choices, Smarter Places, the Routing Company, and Domi's here today, and SRA. And that's Artemis is here as well. So what are we all about? I got asked the other day, why did I start SRITC? And it was out of pure frustration that there wasn't a voice for rural transport within Scotland, the UK, and further afield. And it was an opportunity to bring people together of all walks and shapes of life, which is what we are today, so that we can provide support to each other, share knowledge together, and actually just create a community. And I know a number of people have really found that SRITC has made quite life changes. And for those of you that were at the gathering, we had Sasha, who came from Germany, and he wrote a lovely email saying to me just this week how, having come to the gathering, reignited his passion for applied research, and he's really on the ball and now pulling together some projects in Europe, which is fantastic. That's what it's all about. So we're about that collective voice that we're here today, understanding what's happening and sharing what people are up to. So if you've got something that you want to share with us, whether it's in our news bulletin or whether it's for a cafe, again, give us a shout out and let us know. So what's happened in the last sort of 3.5 weeks, because we are slightly early because February is one of those months that's shorter. You should have had in your inbox the report from the Scottish Rural and Island Parliament. Lots of action from there, and obviously we'll be giving that to Marie Goujon, the Minister, who was asking in Parliament to have a look at it and see what the next steps were. That will be put in the chat. The team will give you a link if you haven't had it in your inbox or you can't find it. So if you want to read it, it'll be in the chat box. And we have also dedicated a page on our website to our rural and island mobility plan, which was one of the big asks that we've put together as a result of the report for Scottish Government in 2022. And we've done that because there's some European projects taking place at the moment on rural transport. And I had quite a lot of people in Europe asking, what's the story? So instead of replying to loads of emails, I've put a website together. So if you want to know more about the RIMP, then visit the website. For those of you not aware of the charitable organisation, the Robertson Trust, it might be worth looking up because they do have different funding streams available. And one of them is a summer internship programme. It's not too late to join it if you wish to. If you wish a postgrad or an undergrad to come and undertake a particular project, then get in touch with them, or if you want a contact detail, I can facilitate that through. But we will be having an advert running to help us build our Learning Knowledge Centre during the summer for hopefully an undergrad. Also, just to put on your radar, and I know some of you will know about this, is that the SCVO are going to be running a series of webinars and various bits and pieces on village halls. So I know we have quite a few communities and village halls today, so that's not on your radar. Maybe you want to have a look at it. As I mentioned, Sasha, and EU bids, we've been asked to be involved in a couple so far. So if you're putting in EU bids or looking at tenders, then we're happy to be involved because there's quite a few services that we can offer. So we've been quite busy in the background, but last but not least, we have a partnership offering that we are revamping. So if anybody wants to get more involved, whether it's a business, an organisation or a community, then just let us know and we'll share with you how you can be more involved in SRITC. So my next thing, and I'm going to embarrass her, and I can't see her because you've all disappeared on your on my screen, is Susan. I'm going to introduce Susan really, really briefly, and she can do the rest of it. But I met Susan through some rural transport pieces that we were both working on. And Susan, I decided I wanted to put a picture up of you. Okay, and I thought, right, let's see if I can find something. This is a bit of a quiz for everybody. Okay, let's see if I can find something online that's when you put in Susan Ross and you put in the car club and what comes up. Now I can't see her, so if somebody's watching, please watch her face reaction. This is what came up when I put in Susan Ross, and I can't see her now. I can see her. Susan, do you know who this is?
Not a clue. No, definitely not me. It looks like I think I know who it is though. Is it not her that was in Grange Hill? And
it was
it EastEnders back in the day?
She's Grange Hill originally. Anybody want to hazard a guess her name? Saying I'm introducing Susan Ross. Anybody? Right, okay, I'll do the spoiler.
Somebody did say Susan Tully.
Susan Tully, the actress.
So she's Susan Tully in Grange Hill, but she's Suzanne Ross as the character. So it was quite an interesting expedition to go on to Google to see, Susan, what comes up when you put in your name and the associated words. So there you go. That's your morning's sunshine through the internet. So I'm going to hand over to Susan now, and I'm very grateful, Susan, for you coming this morning. And I know lots of people will be firing questions at you, so I'm hoping you're ready for this because it's a really interesting subject.
Thank you. I'll just bear with me while I just load up my slides. It's just not wanting to give me that window. There we go. There it is.
Yep, we're all good. Just hit the share button. Yep.
There we go. Can everybody see that now?
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Right. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for that introduction. I don't think I've ever been compared to somebody off Grange Hill before, but there we go. So yes, I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Derwent Valley Car Club and also the programme we ran called the Car Club in a Box Research Programme, which was really about trying to understand how you could create a potential car club in a box for other communities, building on the knowledge that we've learned from Derwent Valley Car Club. So my name is Susan Ross. I'm head of projects at Edge Innovation. I work for Edge Innovation 4 days a week, and I also project manage the Derwent Valley Car Club half a day a week. And then I do other volunteer roles as well around that. For me, I'm very passionate about rural. I grew up in the north part of Northumberland, was involved in a family business on Holy Island, which if you haven't been before, you should definitely go to. It's a beautiful part of the world, but it also gets cut off by the North Sea twice a day. So it's very isolated. Once I'd gone through university, I went and started my role with Nottinghamshire Rural Community Council, which was very much about regenerating rural communities in particular, but also looking at social exclusion, different transport issues, and very much a kind of community ground up approach to how they want to see their areas develop. I then moved across into local government with North Kesteven District Council, which is quite a rural council in Lincolnshire. There I was involved in both the community but also strategic planning for the authority for how that should develop over a 10-year period. Also looked after our dial-a-ride scheme there, and things like CAB and voluntary sector support as well. Then I decided to move back up to the northeast because I had children, all of that sort of thing, long story short, and then got involved with the setup and operation of the Derwent Valley Car Club, which is, it started off in a very small area in Gateshead, but that's a very rural part of Gateshead. So as soon as I say Gateshead, everybody thinks the city part of it. It's not. It's a small community with sort of 450 people in. And then from that, I also then got approached about some work with Edge Innovation, and we're a design thinking consultancy. I'm going to tell you a little bit about design thinking, but what that basically means is about supporting particularly businesses, that can be social businesses as well, to develop better products and services or processes by putting people at the heart of what they do. So it's about really understanding who your customer is and what they want and making sure you develop things around that. So I guess for me, there's a bit of a theme running through all of this, which for me is all about community, about people, and about rurality as well. So I've just put in some nice pictures because that just gives you a little vision of Derwent Valley Car Club. So it started off over 10 years ago now. We got a grant from the National Lottery. It was a Village SOS Fund application, and that gave us funding to buy one vehicle, put solar panels on the roof of the community centre, and get the car club set up and running. Blackhall Mill's quite a forward-thinking community, so probably around 15 years ago, they started to think about how they could reduce their impact on the world. So they put solar panels on the roof of the centre, they've got a ground source heat pump in there, and then start to think, well, actually, transport isn't great in the village. What's going to happen in the future? How can we start to preempt some of those changes that we're expecting? And from that, that's where they decided, you know, it would be great to have a car club. That's a way that we can bring in EVs. We've only ever run it with EVs as well, which is a really important aspect of it. So we've gone from one car club to now 5 across the local area in different communities. They're all in community settings. So we've got one outside a community centre, one outside an Indian restaurant, one outside a library, one going into another community venue, and another one in a small car park, which is surrounded by kind of a cafe and a little Tesco. One of the important things about the Derwent Valley Car Club, which is very different to most car clubs out in the UK, is one, it's run by the community for the community, and two, we also run a voluntary driver scheme. So for people who can't access and drive themselves, we have this extra aspect to it that really does help in terms of making sure that people aren't isolated. So back to design thinking. So a little bit about design thinking and what it is. Sometimes people call it design thinking, sometimes they call it people-centered design. But as I mentioned before, it's really about putting people right at the center of whatever it is that you're developing or creating. And it's about 3 key aspects to it. So it's about your mindset, how you think and how you perceive and how you view the world and things around you. Your skill set, how you act, behave and how you approach things. And then the tool set, which is all about the methods and the processes that you use. I'm going to talk to you about those a little bit more. So in terms of Edge Innovation, we have 6 key principles. So we build collaboration beyond boundaries. We wish to seek and embrace alternative perspectives. We try to nurture critical and creative mindsets within the organisation and within the partners we work with. We seek to understand challenges first before moving to solutions. And to be fair, since I started working with Edge Innovation, this has been quite unique for me because quite often, particularly when you've come from a voluntary sector background, we quite often move quite quick to the solution. And we don't always have enough time to really seek and understand the challenges before we come up with that solution. We make information and ideas tangible, and we're very curious about learning and like to put that into practice. It's about a range of processes. So we first off empathise. We really want to understand what the challenges are for people before we then start to move into defining what they may be, to ideate around some of the potential solutions, and then moving into prototyping particularly. And again, it's about trying to learn how to do things and learn to fail fast when you need to. We quite often talk about these 4 stages within it, particularly. I mean, within the EDGE model, we tend to use 6, which is explore at the start and support at the end, but particularly around kind of 4 areas. And this is based on what we call the Design Council's double diamond model. And those stages around discover, define, develop, and deliver. The first 2 stages are really about designing the right thing, and the latter 2 stages about designing the thing right. And obviously you move between these different stages, especially once you get into that development stage and prototype, because quite often you have to go back to move forward again. The discovery phase is really understanding what we currently know, but also what we don't know, where there might be gaps. And we have a range of different techniques we use to do that process. We then tend to move into define, which is around framing the challenges that we have and understanding what it is that we might want to achieve. Then when you move into development stage, it's really about that facilitation of the co-creation, the ideas, bringing together a range of partners around that so that we can hopefully develop the right thing, but then moving into delivery where you can actually test that and try it out and hopefully reduce the risk of that, and also be able to spot any errors and to make sure that you build the right idea out of there. I mean, obviously, this relates to lots of different things. In some cases, that delivery can be around creating your funding strategy or your pitch and moving that forward. So talking to you a little bit more about the Car Club in a Box project. So what were our goals and objectives of it? It was to apply those human-centered design processes to really define what the stakeholders' challenges were, to then investigate the creation of a potential support package, allowing communities and stakeholders to set up car clubs faster and easier, learning from the best practice that we've created, have an integrated platform for car clubs to use to be able to create revenue generation and more sustainable schemes, and also have a replicable model, which could be used for car clubs and communities and local authorities potentially. So I've just mapped this out because I quite like it, because it shows the messiness of the kind of complexity around car clubs. But there's a huge amount of different aspects that you need to run a car club, from your GDPR side of it, your policies, your maintenance of your vehicles, how you manage your members, the right kind of systems and platforms, your breakdown cover, coordination. There's a whole lot of things that needs to happen before you can kind of run a car club. And what we realised was that actually, to be able to create a potential car club in a box model, we really needed to not just understand that, because obviously we run a car club for over 10 years, but actually really understand what other communities want, what other local authorities want. So when we did this, we did a lot of engagement with stakeholders. So we did community workshops right across Northumberland, into Tees Valley as well. But we also did workshops with local authorities, with the strategic transport body, with the Department for Transport, so a whole range of different stakeholders to really understand what their challenges were and how we could kind of move that forward using the Design Council's principles here. So we really understood what the challenges were. We then started to develop the packages to support around that and started to test that model. And at the end of this project, which was funded by the Connected Places Catapult and Department for Transport, it allowed us to come up with a kind of a business model to take forward at the end of that programme. But that ran between April and September last year. So it wasn't enough funding to actually develop the full model, but it did allow us to test it and to really understand what it was we were going to create. So when we did some of the initial stakeholder meetings, we asked some of our stakeholders what their sort of top of their head concerns were around access to mobility. And these were the kind of top key themes that came across. So there were 5 different ones. So financing and funding, infrastructure and operations, community engagement, accessibility and affordability, and siloed approaches. So in terms of financing and funding, there were a lot around the actual availability of funding to be able to invest in transport, operational costs of transport, but also being able to balance the budget with other priorities. And that's particularly from a local authority's point of view as well. In terms of infrastructure and operations, there was concerns about finding the right areas that were actually suitable to take the infrastructure, but also being able to manage parking and charging and the rollout of mobility hubs for them. In terms of community engagement, they had concerns about actually being able to really fully engage with communities in particular, particularly from a local authority's point of view. I think quite often they feel that they try to do it, but don't necessarily do it very effectively. and being able to really address some of the more diverse needs within different communities, and to be able to promote those new initiatives where they are created effectively to get real buy-in engagement within it. In terms of accessibility and affordability, making sure that mobility caters to all the different vulnerable groups, that it's affordable, and that the locations are also accessible to people. And in terms of siloed approaches, is particularly obviously related to local authorities, but there were concerns around, even within the local authorities, how they relate across different departments, and how they can actually coordinate some of that and make it tangible and real. So then we asked the communities, and obviously there's a lot more information behind this, but we really tried to understand what the kind of key transport needs and challenges were for them in their communities, or what they felt might be missing from that offer within different transport modes. So for them, they want to feel safe. It needs to be affordable, enjoyable, accessible and available, convenient, sustainable, reliable and flexible. And we then mapped them against what they actually currently have within their communities. And what was really clear from that was that there are gaps right across in every community we were involved within. And actually, there is no one transport mode that can actually sustain or fulfill all of those gaps necessarily. So we asked the communities about their key focus. So why would a car club potentially support their ambition? How could the community members be supported to reach those ambitions? And then what actions would contribute towards their ambitions? So from their why was around reducing rural isolation and inequality, protecting the environment, local levelling up, including more tourism, and creating safe and inclusive communities. In terms of the how, that related to normalising alternative transport options, empowering and supporting local people to test, learn and make changes, bring people together from diverse demographics, provide access to connected and integrated transport offerings, and providing access to more employment and economic opportunities. And in terms of the what, it was around creating opportunities and jobs locally, connecting people and organisations for more collaborative working, providing the means and access to opportunities outside of their immediate area, awareness raising and advocacy for alternative transport options, and demonstrating the positive impact of alternative transport. In terms of policymakers' ambitions, we did actually look at their ambitions and where the gaps lay within this as well. I have tried to reduce these slides down because the main presentation that has all of this in, it goes on for quite a bit longer. So I do apologise that I don't have everything in here. But so we focused just on terms of their ambition particularly, but they wanted to evidence the need for investment within transport and secure funding to then deliver some interventions around that. For the medium term, it was around developing and promoting multimodal transport options, developing that infrastructure, both in terms of transport and the charging infrastructure around that, and better connecting their rural areas. In terms of the longer term ambition, it was about having that portfolio of coordinated, safe and accessible transport modes, reducing congestion and cars on the road, and empowering and making progress towards net zero, and having enhanced community well-being with increased access to economic prospects. What we found when we tried to sort of pull all of the learnings from the work together was that actually from a community's point of view, there was some key learnings. So there's a definite need for local people to be empowered to create social and economic change in their communities, of which accessible transport's a key component of, and that there are advantages and disadvantages of all the different various modes available to them, and highlighting the need for a real connected multimodal transport offer. From a policymakers' point of view, it was really clear that actually they have a very aligned ambition along with the communities to actually have that create safe, sustainable, inclusive communities. But actually some of the challenges then related to the fact that actually they don't necessarily have the knowledge, capacity and funding to actually deliver that. So we worked on the actual support package of what the car club in a box would be. So we looked at a range of different stages. So we created this car club roadmap as such. So there's 6 key stages to it. So there's the scoping, the engagement, the funding, the setup, the VDS setup, if there's a voluntary driver scheme within that scheme, and then the ongoing support, maintenance and development of the car club. So I'm just going to briefly take you through these stages. Oh, my slides have decided to jump, so I do apologise because the scoping one was on the last one. So here we go. I don't know why they've moved around. But the scoping stage is really about understanding what the potential needs are within the community for a car club, starting to gather that initial interest from a range of different stakeholders so that you can start to assess the desirable and feasible elements of the support, and develop that concept within your community. And then it moves on to engagement. So at that stage, it's really about actually being able to evidence whether it would work in that community. So that's when you've got all of your surveys, your workshops, your research, so your qualitative and quantitative research, to really gather all those multiple views to try and validate that, and to actually start to get to the point where you have a kind of a high-level business plan for the project, so you'd understand how it would work. That then leads you on to being able to actually get to the stage of having your funding to then be able to put into place a car club. Excuse me. And then once you've got your funding, it's really about that setup. So it's your implementation plan that you've obviously worked on previous to the funding stage, but all of the elements to actually have a car club in place and getting it up and running and launching that car club. Then if you've identified a need for a voluntary driver scheme, then obviously this part is about having all of the policies and practices around that to make sure that you can actually put your car club voluntary driver scheme into place, being able to have all of your volunteers there, being able to do all of your DBS checks and your training inductions and all of the management around that. And then, as I mentioned, the final stage is around that ongoing maintenance and growth. So making sure that you can maintain and grow that car club within the scalability that your community or communities need, depending on how and where you're going to operate that, and how you may want to expand or develop the scheme into different ways. That could be around into different types of vehicles, so adding different types of maybe micromobility into it, or it could be about expanding your actual service into other areas. So the way we see this happening is across really kind of three kind of support packages as such. So initially there would be some free introductory packages, which would be quite high level information, videos about car clubs, why you would want to do it, and some sort of checklists for that. Then if you were to buy into the feasibility package, there would be your kind of how-to guides in that first stage to get you up to your funding. And then the second part of the package would be paid for, and obviously that's from your setup to actually your ongoing support maintenance. So that's everything that I've just mentioned, plus branding, all of your booking system and support around that. And then obviously there is a bespoke one, which is where there may be aspects of that people actually want to bring in some consultancy for, because they maybe don't have the capacity to do all of those bits themselves. So it's a bit of a pick and mix to make sure that it's the right thing for your community. So we've created a car club in a box identity. So we have a mission and a vision. So our mission is to decrease emissions, congestion and travel costs by offering sustainable shared vehicles in communities, making essential and social journeys accessible and affordable for all. And our vision is to empower communities to combat poverty and social isolation, enhancing quality of life and collectively minimising environmental impact. And I think what I just mentioned here is that for us, it's not about creating a model that's kind of a franchise model. For us, it's very much about community empowerment, because that's what we struggled with when we set up the car club at Derwent Valley. Is we got some information, but actually we came up against schemes that wanted to franchise and give us something and take all ownership away from us. They wanted to do it all, although we were paying for that service. Our members were their members, we couldn't access them, and that's not the way we want to create this. So this is really about empowering communities with all of the resources they need to be able to deliver a community car club in their area, but faster, quicker, and hopefully more sustainably. We've created a car club identity. So we've created this brand called Eco Car Club. We've done a lot of testing on this, but the idea of it is obviously it's environmental. You've got the core in there about the communities and the sharing side of it, but it's also about the fact that this can be branded for different communities. So it could be branded for the Derwent Valley area or other local communities. So it has that community flavour, but also that coherence across the different brands. But one of the things that we found out when we did the research was that actually that's what people want. They want to be part of something, and they want to have that potential to share vehicles in different areas as well. So that kind of identity is part of that. And that's it. My email address is on the screen now. Obviously, I'll happily take as many questions as you'd like to throw at me, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them all.